Welcome back, guys. Female pleasure, uh, all about female ejaculations, female pleasure, orgasm, kunzaya is the topic of today's live. Instagram, as usual, is giving me some glitch, but I'm trying to overcome it because today's topic is very close to my heart. Female pleasure, female orgasms, female ejaculation, जिसको हम kunzaya कहेंगे. A topic on which very less awareness is there, or topic on which there are many myths, and we are not even aware exactly whom to approach to know the facts. I should very proudly say today we have an international guest where India will be in conversation with UK. Let me give a very proper introduction of the guest today, Habeeb Akande. I do follow his content since last long time. You should go visit his page while the time I am giving you the introduction. He's a sex educator, erotologist and author. Habeeb has authored several books on Islamic erotology and African sexual practices to empower women and couples. He is passionate about female sensuality and aims to close the gender orgasm gap. His best-selling book, Kunyaza, The Secret to Female Pleasure, explores the ancient African practice of squirting and sexual pleasure. Trust me, it took me almost late 30s to understand what is orgasm. It took me a lot of time to understand what is squirting, more time to actually experience it, and then we have experts here who will be giving us the authentic information. Let me finish. He recently helped produce and feature in the BBC documentary The Orgasm Gap, exploring female sexual pleasure in Rwanda. Primarily based in UK, Habeeb has given intimacy workshops and seminars in UK, France, Brazil, USA, mashallah. His recent male-only webinar, Secret to Female Pleasure, helping women squirt orgasms, provide a safe space for men to learn about the clitoris, which he calls the K-spot. I guess this is our privilege, guys. Sitting in India, someone from UK, based in Nigeria, is going to give us some authentic information. So I request all the followers, all those who are joining, to keep the live very graceful. Drop your questions. If you are above 18, be in the live. If you are below 18, gracefully exit. Let the flow, let us enjoy the flow, and let us take this opportunity to grab maximum knowledge. Trust me, getting this knowledge totally without you paying any single rupee, some international personality coming on our live and delivering is our privilege. So let's welcome him with lots of energy, sir. To the Instagram helps me. I don't want any more glitches today. So do pray that I get a smooth flow of Instagram today. Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Doctor?
Assalamu alaikum. Assalam. I'm a bit excited and a bit nervous.
Now, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, sir. I'm a bit nervous because I wonder, I'm like worried for my English. If at all you feel I'm making any mistakes, feel free to correct me, sir, in the pronunciation especially.
Your English is perfect. It's easily understandable. I'm just conscious that maybe I might speak too fast. So I'm going to take my time and try and speak slowly and clearly. I have a bad habit of speaking very quickly and mixing up my words. So if you find that I'm speaking too quickly or people do not understand what I'm saying, please let me know and I'll repeat myself.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. First of all, I do follow your content, sir. I'm a doctor, I'm a life coach, and a sex educator. But trust me, sir, it took almost 35. I was in my late 30s when I actually understood orgasm, when I actually had the experience of kunzaya. That is the reason I am a big fan of you, because some person giving so nicely, so gracefully the information in India is very rare, sir, very rare. So first of all, a big thanks for the way you are explaining it is in such a simple form. Even with my ladies friend, I can't talk it, sir. I can't talk it. I can't explain it. So my first question is, how on earth could you come to this topic, sir?
Very good question. To be honest, what I'm trying to do is to normalize sexual pleasure, especially in regards to women, because I think in many countries and societies around the world, women feel as if they're not deserving or entitled to sexual pleasure, which is very unfortunate. Where a lot of women, even like married women or women who've been sexually active for a number of years, they view sex as the right of the man, of the husband, and they are there just to satisfy his needs. When in reality, especially even as Muslims, we have a rich tradition dating back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who spoke about the importance of men sexually satisfying their wives. And I'm emphasizing that because oftentimes many Muslims nowadays, even scholars, preachers, are uncomfortable talking about this topic. They can speak about men's right to sex and the importance of women sexually satisfying their husbands, but when it comes to understanding or the importance of men understanding the female anatomy, understanding how to make sure the woman is sufficiently aroused, understanding the importance of ensuring that you're not just thinking about your own pleasure, but you're prioritizing her pleasure. This is from our tradition. So even from an Islamic perspective, it's actually quite normal. But unfortunately, over the years, since colonization, a lot of Muslims have lost this understanding where we view sex as just about procreation or about male sexual satisfaction, when in reality, it's supposed to be an act that both the man and the woman both enjoy. And women are just as much entitled to sexual satisfaction. A number of years ago, we came across a number of stories and traditions and scholars speaking about this, like I said, in the pre-colonial periods. Whereas nowadays, it's very uncommon because a lot of Muslims in different parts of the world have I would say, a colonized mindset where they feel uncomfortable to speak about things that many of the people of the past spoke about quite freely and openly. And also, there's a lot of misunderstanding and miseducation in regards to the female anatomy, and I hear this a lot from a lot of medical professionals, physicians, gynecologists, and sex educators, where we don't know enough about the female anatomy, where we know a lot about the male anatomy. And not only we know about the female anatomy when it comes to reproduction, in terms of how a woman gives birth, but when it comes to sexual pleasure, especially in the UK where I'm based, unfortunately, female pleasure is omitted from the sex education manual. So when we speak about sex education again, they'll talk about sexually transmitted diseases, sexual health, the act of sex, but in terms of sexual pleasure, that is something, especially female sexual pleasure, that is something that, again, like I said, is not really spoken about. And obviously, being of Nigerian descent, I was also interested to hear about the African contributions towards sex and female pleasure, because oftentimes we hear about negative or disturbing issues that happens in Africa, like female genital mutilation, but we don't hear about positive stories about sexually empowered women that's teaching people about sexual pleasure, women's right to sexual satisfaction, and cultures such as the Kunyaza, which we'll speak a little bit about later, where women are taught from a relatively young age about their anatomy, to own their sexuality and to enjoy sexual pleasure with their husband. And men are also taught vice versa about the female anatomy, and ensuring they create a safe space where women feel comfortable, where they can not only experience sexual pleasure, but orgasm and squirt and many different things that a sexually confident, active woman should be able to experience. So for me, it was something that there's a lot of information that I'm not really saying anything new. And that's something and that's why I also try to, my inspirations or where I've learned these different things or different people speaking about this subject, which do not really get the opportunities that maybe I'm blessed to have. I will try and share or amplify some of their voices, because again, like I said, what I'm saying is nothing new from both an Islamic perspective or an African perspective. Even in India with the Kama Sutra, that's why I find it really strange that, no, I understand the reason why, because of colonialism, but hundreds of years ago, this wasn't a taboo topic, both from a cultural perspective or religious perspective. Whereas now, unfortunately, I understand that, this is a taboo topic and a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. So that's why it will take some time to re-educate people and allow people, especially women, to feel comfortable and to feel that, like I said, that they are entitled to sexual pleasure. And I'm constantly emphasizing or speaking about sexual pleasure as opposed to just sex itself, because there are many people, or there are many women who are sexually active, but they're not enjoying sex. And that's something that a lot of men are unaware of. Because for a lot of us men, our understanding is if she's having sex, if she's had children, then of course that she's enjoyed sex, when that's far from the truth. There are a lot of women who have had sex for a number of years, maybe they've had children, but they've never experienced an orgasm and things like that. So that's why it's about, yeah, again, educating people and letting people know that even if it took someone 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it doesn't matter. That's okay. They are not abnormal. It's not unusual. But now that someone has found, like what they're able or capable of experiencing, I think it's important that maybe this information is shared amongst others.
Very true, sir, very true. And as you said, like my mom, she's 76. She taught us how to ride vehicle, how to learn computer. She educated us. But till date, I have never discussed what was her sexual life or how was it. She has a very happy married life, giving birth to 4 kids. But it is not discussed. She never told me. I knew what is contraception. I knew what is STI. I knew the anatomy. I knew the physiology. I knew the pathology. But I had no idea, sir, being a doctor, clitoris is that part where it is all about pleasure. And it took me 35 years to understand. So my daughter, who is 18 now, she has a question for you. What is the right age where a girl or a female or a virgin, so-called virgin without having actual penile intercourse, a girl can explore and have orgasms or squirting or kunjaya? What should be the right age? Because she is 18, she's curious.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll try and answer that into two parts. So again, it's a subjective matter. It's one that's on a case-by-case basis. It's not for me to say this is the right age or this is not the appropriate age. But in terms of, if we first talk about the education, and then we can talk about what age should someone, or it's appropriate age to experience that. That's two parts. So in terms of being informed on education, I think, again, it depends on the person. It depends on their level of maturity, depends on their cultural background. But I personally think that there's no, I don't want to say certain age, because in certain cultures it could be seen, and a lot of my work is for adults. And the reason why I do my work for adults is then adults, obviously, they are able to, it's up to them to determine when's the right age to tell their children or people or their students. But for me, the way I look at it, if you, for example, I'm assuming obviously your daughter's a Muslim, or for any Muslim listening to this, if you read the Quran, okay, the Quran, we believe, is obviously a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a book from God. It's a religious textbook, as well as obviously the Sunnah, the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are many references to sex and sexual relations. Now, unfortunately, because many people do not understand Arabic, or a lot of the translations do not actually explicitly state what the Quran says. But if you're reading the Quran, you'll be sexually empowered and sexually educated from a relatively young age. Allah speaks about, obviously not in a vulgar way, but Allah speaks about how we've been created from sperm. Allah speaks about sexual relations between obviously a man and his wife, and references how Adam covered, he covered, reference to sexual intercourse of his wife. Allah speaks about sexual, and the Prophet speaks about sexual intercourse being a blessing from Allah, and it's a means to earn divine reward. So if you are learning in like a madrasa, learning about Islam, you're going to be exposed to these sexual stories from a relatively young age. Now, it doesn't mean one needs to actually engage in that, but my point is that even in our tradition, both in the Quran, both in the stories of the Prophet and early companions, there are many stories of women even asking about their sexual rights to the Prophet from their husbands, or complaining that they were sexually dissatisfied. So this idea that, like there's young people or children shouldn't be exposed to this, if they are understanding, and obviously I was born a Muslim and I was aware of these stories from a relatively young age, before I was 18, before I was 16 or 15. So this idea, like again, that children or young people shouldn't be exposed to this, if they have access to the Quran and the Hadith, they're going to be hearing about these sexual references. Because even in terms of having a wet dream, there was a woman who went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and she wanted to know the ruling. What is the ruling if a woman sees what a man sees in a dream? I.e. means she has a wet dream. Now, some of even the female companions at the time, they were, shy and all like, how can a woman ask such a question? But the Prophet ﷺ, he still answered the woman. Now, again, some women, like I said, are very uncomfortable with such conversations. Other women aren't, but it's still something that is important to know. Whether someone is sexually active or not, for example, if someone has a wet dream, but a man can have a wet dream and a woman can have a wet dream where they expel fluids during their dreams because of obviously like an erotic dream, they need to know what the Islamic ruling is, as in they have to have take a purificatory bath. Also, that's from Muslim. So if you're not aware of your anatomy, if you're not aware of um, sexual education, you wouldn't know what to do in these type of situations. So this idea that someone shouldn't know about sex or their anatomy until they are like married or sexually active, I don't necessarily agree with that. But in terms of what is the appropriate age, again, that's like I said, it depends on the person, their family, and what they're comfortable with. So I wouldn't necessarily say there is a set age that you should that some because this is education I'm talking about. I'm not speaking about sexual acts. So yeah, so that's what I would say. It's a case by case basis, and let's be honest with ourselves. If we are not going to have these conversations with younger people and children and things like that, they're going to find out about anyway via the internet, via porn. So this idea that we're going to put our head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist, whether you like it or not, people are going to be informed or misinformed by their friends, by what they see on the internet. So again, I think, for example, with your daughter, 18 years old, she's an adult. So even whether someone is married or sexually active, to understand and learn these things, I don't see no issue with it. But again, it's not for me to say this is the set age or not. Or not. So hopefully that answers the first part of the question. And again, similarly, in terms of experience, again, that depends on the culture, depends on when someone's comfortable. And this is something, even from an Islamic perspective, I know in our respective countries, we have different age limits in terms of when someone can get married, when someone can drive, when someone can do X, Y, and Z. Islamically, it's not set and it's not determined because it depends on the culture, it depends on the person. And I like that approach as well. So it's not for, when we're speaking about what is like age appropriate sex education, the way obviously naturally I would speak to a 15-year-old will be very different to how I maybe speak to a 35-year-old. Because obviously, and even depend on the cultural background, or the way I may speak to Muslims may differ from a more conservative background, may differ to how I speak to maybe a non-Muslim from more, you could say, a liberal background or whatever. So again, that it's all about understanding things from a case-by-case basis. But I just think it's unhealthy for someone to then say this is like the age and expect that to be applied to everyone around the world. So I do not know when someone is ready to kind of receive this information for someone maybe living in India. But at the same time, being honest and realistic with ourselves, to think that a 16-year-old or 17-year-old Indian boy or Indian girl is not exposed to sexual information, we're lying to ourselves. So if you want to wait until it's too late, so to speak, like a day before their marriage or their wedding, sorry, they've already been sexually educated or sexually miseducated, whether you like it or not. So even if someone, by the time they are, just say 25 or 35, and that's when they might have their first sexual experience, for example, they've had already maybe 10 or 15 years of sex miseducation, whether you like or not, from porn. So let's be honest with ourselves. So again, it's for me, and although, like I said, my information is out for adults, I just say it's for adults, because that way, I'm not targeting children, but whoever obviously wants to access it or view it or read it, they're welcome to. If they're uncomfortable with it, then again, they don't have to listen to it, they don't have to read it. But at least the information is out there. And there are some people who are not comfortable from hearing this information from loved ones or parents, which is fine. It's not necessarily that you need to hear, even if like you are a sex educator, maybe even your child may not want to necessarily hear that from you, but they still want to hear that information, and that's fine. So again, it's what I would say is that if there are people in place that can provide that information that maybe younger people feel comfortable to speak to or to listen to, that's a wonderful thing. And that's again one of the blessings of the internet, that you don't necessarily need to be in the same room to get this information. So you can listen to this, like for example, from IG Live, you can buy books, you can, read articles online, and then you can make your own decision. And again, like I said, it's I don't think it's for me to be telling people this is what the appropriate age is for someone to be educated, because ultimately a lot of what I'm doing, I'm providing education. There is some entertainment in that, don't get me wrong, because some people, I think if you're just providing information and statistics and data, will overwhelm people and it become quite boring. So although I do try to entertain him, like with my page, and put some like memes and things like that, ultimately it's to educate people. So again, and I don't think anyone is too young to kind of receive sex education. Like I said, it's on a case by case basis.
Very true. Yeah, and as you said, entertainment, I went through your page, sir. You have some interesting feeds, the fountains, the book opening, and the fountains coming out. So, how you get these ideations?
I have a number of people send me these things because yeah, I'm fortunate enough that I've got a number of people that follow me in different parts of the world, and I think they understand what I'm trying to do. So when I've got a number of friends and people that just follow my page who actually will send me like these reels or these memes or these captions for me to repost. So I get them. I get quite a lot. Before it was a lot of researching independently by myself, whereas now a lot of these information is coming to me, and I'm just like I repost some of the ones that I find the most humorous or the most informative or the best ones.
Because it is very rare to see such a sensual topic presented in such a humor way.
Yeah,
And
I think again because even the way so even for myself, the way like you can have information, right, that you want to pass on, but it's part of wisdom to know how to deliver that message or to communicate that message in a way that is going to be the person is going to be receptive to receive that message. I can say anything and everything that's important, but I think is important, sorry. But if it goes beyond, like the person thinks this is too much, it's like listening to a lecture. It's like going to a masjid and this person speaking down at me or not speaking to me. It can be, again, the person's not going to receive it. Or if I'm speaking as if, everyone's got a problem. So with a lot of, and I do understand the reason why. That's why my aim is, or my focus is sexual pleasure as opposed to sexual health education. Because when we speak about sexual health, it's very broad, and
yeah,
there's a lot of
very
issues
good.
that you need to cover. But when you speak about pleasure, ultimately, if I'm speaking about pleasure, it's something that should bring a smile to the face. So it's something that is happiness. It's something that is joyful or enjoyable, whether one is experiencing it or one wants to experience it. So if that's the case, then you should link that to, even if someone is struggling, they can kind of maybe laugh at the situation and maybe this is what I want to get or want to receive. So I'm not a medical doctor, so that's why again I don't provide. I'll provide some information or some links, but because I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not providing sexual health services. I can go down the realm of like a comical, entertaining way because it's linked to pleasure. The same way if someone's speaking about happiness, if someone's speaking about like yeah, if I were to say happiness, it means different things to different people, and what you might find happy is different to someone else. So it needs to be quite light. And this may sound controversial. I'm not afraid of shaming men in a way that you should understand the woman's body, the woman's anatomy. I don't shame women because I think a lot of women have enough pressure as it is from society and culture. Um, but with men, I think in a way, in a good way, it can motivate us. So like I might put up some posts that kind of shame men that you should know how to satisfy a woman or understand the clitoris. So because with a lot of men, we have this ego, we have a bravado that we think that we know everything. So when you're showing that actually you don't know something, then I think for a lot of men, myself included, it's a way where to motivate them to be like, okay, I need to know this. I can't not know this kind of thing. So that's, and I think a lot of women find that quite, from the comments that I received, they find that quite hilarious. So, so yeah, that's the approach that I take. Obviously, with women, it will be just more a case of informing them or providing, like maybe factual or beneficial information that, whether it's like, for example, orgasms that a lot of women who struggle to climax during intercourse, that's very common. it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with them, so they can feel at ease with themselves. Where I'm speaking about things like FGM or female circumcision, that is quite common in a number of parts of the world, that even if a woman has undergone this, she can still experience pleasure. So I want to, it's about restoring hope. I don't just want to talk about the problems. I don't want to just talk about issues and a lot of the bad things that maybe have happened, but to try and restore hope and talk about there's light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So that's the approach I'll take with women. But with men, it's more a case of sometimes poking fun at men to kind of be like, okay, this is what you need to do to kind of be, you know, a better lover to your wife and things like that. So that's my modus operandi, however you call it.
I am getting you, sir. There was one critical question which I have faced in India, being a female, being a Muslim, putting content on sex. Even Instagram sometimes sends a message that you are crossing community guidelines. I have to block all my family members. I have to block my few friends because then there are big, huge labels on what I'm doing. So my question to you, sir, is what hurdles did you face when you started coming up with this awareness or this topic, particularly the pleasure topic? Because as you said, educating on the anatomy is okay, but educating on the pleasure part becomes of, oh my God, what are you doing? I had to convince my parents, I had to convince my sisters that I am doing something normal thing, but they are not happy with it. My friends are not happy with it. Sometimes even Instagram is not happy with it. But somehow we are, standing here firm. We are doing something right. And when I found you, sir, I was like, okay, I am doing perfectly fine. So my question is, what were the hurdles, obstacles, जो तकलीफें आई होंगी, what were those and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that's a very good question. So I think in the beginning, one of my books where I was looking at sexuality and erotology in Islam, like from an Islamic perspective. So my book, I don't know if you're familiar with it. So A Taste of Honey. So this book came out in 2015 or 16, I believe, where I was speaking about this similar topic, but from an Islamic perspective and showing the history of, Muslim scholars speaking about the importance of mutual sexual satisfaction, especially the importance of female sexual satisfaction. Now, maybe because the book is very thick, it's like over 300 pages, and maybe because it had Islam in the subtitle, it wasn't received as well as I thought it would be. Because a lot of people were like, why are you speaking about, sex or sexual pleasure and Islam or Muslims? And a lot of people felt uncomfortable by it. And again, I'm not someone who's trying to push things on people, but the reaction wasn't as what I thought it would be. So then I thought, okay, I will continue talking about this topic, but not just concentrating on Muslims, but just speaking about it generally. Because I know that even a lot of non-Muslims are not aware of the female anatomy and women's right to sexual pleasure. So I just thought, let me speak about it from a cultural perspective, like an African perspective, but not necessarily a religious or Islamic perspective. And then I noticed a number of the people who were very uncomfortable with me speaking about it previously, all of a sudden they were comfortable to listen to me or to hear about what I've got to say. And one thing I would say in terms of, I can be quite stubborn. So I was not waiting for validation or approval from others. I knew from the beginning, and this is something that I think anyone who is talking about these type of issues or educating people in a conservative country or society, you cannot please everyone. And I think when you go into something trying to please everyone or gain everyone's approval, you're doing yourself a disservice. And not everyone is going to appreciate what you're doing. And not everyone is even going to understand the reason why, because people, like I said before, have their different comfort levels. And even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were some, like I mentioned earlier, there were some women who were uncomfortable with another woman asking about sensitive matters. So I'm not going to present an idea that in the past all of the women were sexually empowered and spoke about these issues and men didn't have any issue with it. No, there were some men who felt like this was not befitting. And there was also some women who also felt uncomfortable by it. But again, from an Islamic perspective, the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't rebuke the women or speak ill of the women who wanted to know these answers or who were educating other women. So from an Islamic perspective, you have the best of men, the best of people who didn't have an issue with this. And again, like I said, a number of Muslim scholars who spoke about this. So I was well aware that, okay, there is history from an Islamic perspective. Now, rather than focusing on those people who are uncomfortable and don't like the topic, I'll just focus on my time and energy on people who maybe want to be interested, who want to know. So that's, I think, the most important thing, because if you go into something thinking, oh, my relative, this, or this friend doesn't like it, or this person, that person, you're never going to please everyone. And the funny thing is some of my detractors or people who did not appreciate what I was doing 5, 6 years ago, now they're asking me about my book. Now they've purchased my book, but I'm not doing it for them. I'm not doing it for them. And I just think that's one of the dangers when you go into something trying to please everyone, and you want everyone to be comfortable. Now, of course, I make mistakes, and not everything I do is correct. And I'm not going to pretend that. But first and foremost, I have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I constantly pray, ask for guidance, I seek forgiveness from Allah. That's the most important thing. Other than that, gaining everyone else's approval and pleasure, that's not important to me. Because like I said, you cannot please everyone. If you're delivering this message like you are online, you're exposing yourself to hundreds, if not thousands of people around the world from different backgrounds. Not everyone will be able to take it. So if you're consistent in what you're doing, and you're sincere, then those who want to accept it and learn from it and appreciate it will. And those who won't, maybe they might appreciate after, or they might continue to have an issue with it. So again, I just think we can't focus on those who are uncomfortable with the topic, because like I said, not everyone, some people, again, and you have to look at it from their perspective. Some people are just not interested in the topic because they don't think it's important. And it may be because, for example, a number of men who feel this topic is inappropriate, because they're sexually satisfied, and they assume that their female partners, wives, what have you, are sexually satisfied, they think it's not an important topic because no one has brought it to their attention that actually there's a lot of women who aren't sexually satisfied, even maybe your partner, that we haven't spoken about. So that's why a lot of men maybe have reservations. There are a number of women who have reservations because maybe they're not comfortable with their body, they're not comfortable with their sexuality, and maybe it might be because there's a lot of shame attached to it. So again, there's different reasons why different people have issues with the topics. Now, it's not for me to relieve everyone or to make them feel comfortable, because like I said, it's not for everyone. I'm not saying it's for every Muslim in the world or every African or every person in the UK. No, it's for people who are interested. It's something that I think is beneficial knowledge. Those who want to take it, take it. Those who don't want to take it, then it's fine. You don't have to. So that's my approach. So when I think about like the hurdles or the issues, I try and I where there's hurdles or challenges, I try and think about things which I can potentially overcome. So things like you mentioned about Instagram. So Instagram, as I'm sure you're aware, they are policing a number of sex educators from, like I've had a couple of red flags, as in if you post certain content, they might take down your page, they might prevent you from doing Instagram lives. So you have to be very creative. So that's why with myself, I try and be very creative, that sometimes I might not explicitly write sex in my caption or orgasms, because those posts, you might be on a shadow ban. And basically what that means is that if you post something, they won't let a number of your followers see it, or they'll kind of like hide you. So that's where that's why like the visuals are quite clever, because like the one I think you reposted of the book where it's got the water. So you kind of, it's not explicit, but people know what it means. Like that. Yeah, so you have to be quite clever. So and especially because they're policing on, and it's quite interesting because if you were to show an image of a male, not a real penis, but like a model or a drawing, they won't really clamp down on that. But anything about the female anatomy is like, no, we have to clamp down on it. So that's why, again, like I said, it's about being quite creative in terms of how you put your stuff out there. That's the only thing. So for me, again, it's just a challenge. And again, I'll just say, rather than looking at the problems, I'll just try and think about what are potential solutions of overcoming some of these problems or challenges, but knowing that not everyone is going to be able to accept it. So I don't feel like hard done by the worry that, oh, this person, or like I still work. So I'm a chartered accountant by profession. Now, some of my colleagues know the work that I do. Many don't. I don't bring it up because again, it'll be very uncomfortable for many people. So again, I don't bring it up unless someone asks me outside of my world of teaching. Because again, many people will feel uncomfortable by it. So it's just about knowing um, when is the right time to speak to people, and if people are uncomfortable by it, then that's fine. Then you just don't need to continue to speak about it further.
That was very beautiful piece of knowledge for me because first of all, what benefited me from your page was the Islamic context to sexual pleasure. Because initially even I was given the guilt that I'm doing something against Islam, and I don't have much knowledge about it. But after going through your posts, many of the references, that was the one benefit. And second, yeah, as you said, we started to learn how not to do the direct message because I'm a doctor. So for penis, we say penis. For clitoris, clitoris. For intercourse, intercourse. These are the very natural words which come out. But then we learned it a hard way because we got the you are breaking the community guideline red flag. So we learned and we're growing. On that note, sir, I have one very curious question about the Kunyaza. This was very new word for me. Never heard this terminology. The meaning or the experience I know. So some things which you want to share. How did the word originate? And I did see the video of BBC, but still I would like to hear from you. How
Sure,
the word originated?
sure. So Kunyaza, it's a word from Rwanda. So Rwanda is a country. It's a relatively small country in East Central Africa, and the Kunyaza basically refers to an ancient African practice that to help women orgasm and experience female ejaculation, also known as squirting. Now, the story of Kunyaza, according to Rwandan legend, there was a queen in ancient times, dating back to maybe the 16th century, who her husband was away on a military expedition. So she was by herself, and she was yearning for sexual attention. So she summoned one of her guards to make love to her. Now, the guard at this time, he was petrified because obviously if the king came back and found out, he probably would have been executed or what have you. So he initially was, apprehensive, and she said, you need to make love to me to satisfy my needs. Now, as he came towards her, he was holding his penis, and his penis was knocking against her clitoris. And it was from there, it was said that a large gush of fluid emanated from her loins, and the river, the Lake Kivu, was formed. And when the king came back, then the queen told the king, "This is how I want you to make love to me. It's not just about penile vaginal intercourse. I want you to perform this tapping technique, which is known as the kunyaza. So the kunyaza is known as the tapping technique, and the gush of fluid is known as punyala." Now, that story is probably not necessarily true, but that's just how it's told in Rwanda and neighboring countries. There is also another version of the story where instead of the woman calling the guard to make love to her, it is said that she started tapping her clitoris, her clitoral glands herself, and then that's how the Kunyaza tradition was formed. And then she told her husband, when he came back, "This is how I want you to stimulate me and how I want you to satisfy me by doing this tapping technique with the penis." So that's basically the origin, or the two origins of the story. And since then, it's been taught from generation to generation, primarily by women to younger women, and then obviously men to younger men prior to marriage, about the importance of sexually satisfying a woman, and women knowing that they're entitled to sexual pleasure, whether it's by way of an orgasm or squirting or just general sexual pleasure. And yeah, so I came across that tradition when someone, a reader of one of my previous books, sent me an email on the 8th of August, which is in 2016, I believe, which funny enough is Female Orgasm Day, which many people are unaware. So that was quite a coincidence. And my book was about African erotology. Erotology refers to the study and the description of sexual love and lovemaking. So, like the Kama Sutra is a book of Hindu erotology. I was writing a book about African heritology. So the reader asked me why didn't I mention Kunyaza in my book. Now at that time I was not aware of what this Kunyaza practice was. I did what most people do. I searched on Google, came across this, this wonderful tradition and this practice, and then I saw there was a Belgian filmmaker who was doing a crowdfunding for a documentary he was working on about Kunyaza. So I reached out to him and a couple of my friends from Rwanda and Kenya and Uganda, because I was told that's also where it's practiced, to kind of learn and find out more about it. And I thought this would be really good in a book, because I saw a book in German and French, but no book in English about Kunyaza and the history of Rwanda's sexual history, and teaching men about the importance of satisfying women, and likewise women understanding their anatomy and experiencing sexual pleasure. So I went about, doing my own research, speaking to different people, and then I released my book, Kunyaza, The Secret to Female Pleasure, in November 2018. And then I think about a couple of years after, I was doing a couple of workshops as well about the book, and then I received an email from a producer from the BBC who had read my book, and they wanted to make a documentary about the Kunyaza practice and the work that I was doing. So they attended one of my workshops that I did in January 2020 about Kunyaza. It was called The Pleasure Gap, because we hear a lot about the orgasm gap, referring to the fact that men orgasm more frequently than women during the heterosexual encounters. But whilst the orgasm gap is important, I also wanted to focus on the pleasure gap, because it's not just about orgasm, it's about ensuring that women are experiencing sexual pleasure just as much as men, because they are entitled to pleasure, or they are entitled to pleasure just as much as men are. So you did the workshop, which was, well received or sold out in London, like I said, in January 2020. And then I helped the BBC, because they then flew out to Rwanda and they did some filming. And then that culminated in the documentary, The Orgasm Gap, which is an audio documentary. And then they did a short video documentary, which is on YouTube, which is shared. And so far, so the audio documentary, altogether, they've got about over like 16 million viewers. So I'm really pleased the way that's gone on. And it was good, because what I wanted to focus on was the importance, and even the subtitle of my book, sexual pleasure. That whilst, yes, Kunyaza has a reputation for squirting and orgasms, and women, and I do believe every woman can orgasm, I do believe every woman can squirt and things like that. The ultimate goal should be pleasure. It shouldn't necessarily be orgasm or squirting, because that could put unnecessary pressure on the woman or the couple. So that's something I wanted to emphasize, and that's why, even though the title of the audio documentary is The Orgasm Gap, like you've seen with the video one, it was entitled Sexual Pleasure, because I wanted people to understand that, and not to put too much pressure on themselves, as in they have to squirt or they have to orgasm during every sexual encounter. But knowing that they can, I think that's important, because I think a number of women think that because they may not have experienced an orgasm before during sex, or squirted before, they feel that they can't do it. And I think that's incorrect. I think it just may take some time. It may take some practice. It may take some time for both the woman and her, her partner, her husband, to understand her body and for her to feel comfortable with him, but to know that it's something that every woman is capable of doing. I think that's important. That was the overriding message with the documentary and the book.
Very true, very true. And looking at your content, now when I talk so much about orgasm, but when I had experienced it for the first time, trust me, let me be very honest, I thought I am the first woman on earth who is experiencing this. No one has experienced it, because no one had told me. It was like I was having my own fingering, and it happened, and I was like, Eureka, and something like this, I've explored something new. It was later I understood that this I should have experienced long back. I have not experienced it. And husband being supportive, as you said, it was me who understood first how I can experience it. Only then I could communicate it to him. Okay, this is how I want. Otherwise, what will he understand?
Yeah. So, a quick question: why do you think you said that no other woman told you about this? Is it something like why is that? I'm just wondering. I'm curious. Why is it that You wasn't told about that women can experience this before
I
you
don't
experience it
know.
yourself.
It was never because I'm a doctor. As you said, in our syllabus also, we have the anatomy. I knew the clitoris as an organ, as a vestigial organ. In medical terminology, some organs are vestigial. Appendix is vestigial. A vestibule, a bone of the ear is vestigial organ, which whether is there or whether it's not there doesn't matter. That is all I knew about clitoris. I knew that it penetrates a vagina. I knew all this, but I didn't know what I will actually feel when I get orgasm. No
Yeah.
one spoke to me, trust me. I don't know I'm answering your question properly.
No, you are answering it, and I've heard this with different people, and it's surprising because I think in a lot of even with the sex education and the medical training that I'm seem to be hearing from a number of professionals, it speaks about the biology or the acts of sex as opposed to pleasure. So because it doesn't speak about pleasure, people are very educated and well versed to know about like the biology and the act of sex, and they can speak about what actually happens. But in terms of like the feelings and experiences and the joys that one should or could experience with these acts, that's not really spoken about. So that's why, I've heard of a number of, medical doctors, gynecologists, and others who've said similar things to what you're saying. And it's just quite, again, the reason why I find it quite strange is not only from like a cultural African or West African perspective. I was known about this from both men and women knew about this from a relatively young age, and also like I mentioned from the studies that I did learning about Islam, a lot of the scholars when they spoke about sex, they spoke about sexual pleasure, both for the man and the woman. So for me, it was very normal, or it should, and I thought it would be normal for a lot of people. But unfortunately, and to be fair, a lot of those books that I read were in Arabic, and they were books prior to European colonization. But since I would say the 20th century, a lot of the books I've come across, even a lot of the books written by Muslims, they just speak about, similar to what you said, about the act of sex. They don't really speak about sexual pleasure, especially women's orgasm, because I think the reason why they've adopted a Victorian Christian understanding about sexual relations, even though they're Muslims, so they will speak about male ejaculation because that's how to conceive. So that's why they speak about ejaculation. But because a woman doesn't necessarily need to have an orgasm to conceive, to have a child, that's why they don't speak about it. So they just speak about sex in from the realm of procreation purposes. So because they look at it as sex as a procreational act rather than a recreational act, people ignore the recreational side. Whereas, like I said, a lot of the early Muslim scholars from before, like Imam al-Suyuti, who a well-renowned scholar, he wrote over 23 books about sex and pleasure, and he spoke in depth a lot about the importance of women's sexual satisfaction. And that's why, again, it's just something that hundreds of years ago, this was very normal, and women felt entitled to pleasure, even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why you had the companions, women, complaining that they wasn't sexually satisfied in their marriage, and they wanted a divorce, and it wasn't seen as shameful or how could a woman say that, because at that time, men and women knew and understood that women do or can orgasm and are entitled to pleasure. Whereas unfortunately nowadays, I think that understanding that many Muslims have is that women are not entitled to pleasure. They're not entitled to orgasm. That's why to even say female orgasm and Islam in the same sentence, a lot of people feel afraid to say that because they feel that it's not befitting. So that's why there's a lot of re-education, shall I say, needs to be done, because a lot of people have been misinformed and miseducated. So yeah, like I said, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But thankfully, obviously, you come to that realization and you're doing great work. So keep it
I
up.
feel I feel blessed, sir, because it was only orgasm which I experienced. Squirting, or I call it as fountain, because that experience I got much later. And then
Right.
I realized it's not necessary my partner has to be with me. I am self-powered, self-empowered. If I want it in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, I can enjoy it on my own. Like if I'm in a long distance relationship, I can't be deprived. If I want sex, if I'm hungry, it's okay. If I'm thirsty, it's okay. If I want sex, I used to express this to my friends, and they used to label me, just label me. And I used to say, this is normal. I want sex, and let me use my fingers. And then I started getting these fountains. And
Yeah.
that was like liberating. That was like so liberating. I used to feel, Baapre, I should tell this to every girl. Like, hold her and tell her, okay, this is what we can enjoy. This is in our hands. Pleasure is my right. But thank God there are people like you who have evidence. Who have evidence that this is so normal. This in a country like where the practice started, Rwanda, right? There, every girl knows at such an early age, sir. That is the right to know it. We know
Yeah.
how to do mass, we know how to do wasbu, we know how to do usul, we know what is baby conception and male ejaculation. But in all this, we never knew what is my pleasure. And now that is the reason, sir, I also had you on my life, so that those people who put Islam and sex in some particular box, uh, there also we will have some awareness. Okay? It's okay where I can have a dining table conversation. And that is why I'm
And I have a question for you. So, with the conversations you've had with your friends and other women, what has been generally the response from your women friends? Have they been? Is it that they were unaware, or they don't feel that they can experience these pleasures?
absolutely they're unaware. They're
Wow.
totally unaware of it, first of all. Second thing, according to them, it is the duty to please husband so that he stays in the marriage. And he will, not like have some extramarital affairs. First thing. Second thing, it is about how I appear so hot and so beautiful so that I please him and he gets his ejaculation.
Uh,
But what about me? Sometimes in my and Ali's case, Ali, my husband's name is Ali. He may not have an ejaculation. It is only me today, which is okay. And when I discuss this discussion is not okay, sir. Fortunately, with my husband, it is very okay. That is my blessing in disguise. But with my core friends, it comes on your character, directly on your character.
yeah, I mean that's where it's a problem because the first part, like I was saying, if a lot of women are unaware, then obviously it's important that they are informed that this is something that they're capable of experiencing. So they need to be informed. That's the first part, like you mentioned. The second part, which is just as important, is that to change the mindset that their duty is just to please the man. And I think that's where it's a problem because if you have a lot of men that think that, even if women are aware and they're empowered and they understand what they're capable of experiencing, how can we close the orgasm gap or the pleasure gap if men still believe that women are there just to please them, not the other way around? So that's why, in order to change attitude, men need to be involved in the conversation. And that's why, like I mentioned earlier, where I will put up some posts in a way to kind of like shame men, as in, no, your duty is to please your woman. So the attitude that they should go into their sexual encounter is not, she's there to please me, I'm there to please her. And if I haven't been able to sexually satisfy her, I've not done my duty as a man. I've not done my duty as a husband. The same way as men, we take pride, or most men take pride in being able to financially provide for our wives, like house, this, that. We should also take pride in being able to sexually satisfy her as well. And that's why, again, to change that attitude or that mindset, it has to be a cultural change. Because, again, if women feel empowered or are empowered and believe I'm entitled to sexual pleasure, that's great. But if we're not also helping men or understand the importance of sexually satisfying women, then there will just be women who are informed and sexually empowered, but by themselves, as in not enjoying that sexual satisfaction with men. And I think that's the next big hurdle that I think needs to be overcome, because, like I said, there's a number of people that are speaking about women's sexual satisfaction, which is great. But a lot of those conversations are just to women only. And it's good in the sense of, like I said, the first part, so women are informed of what they're capable of experiencing. But then how can we then bridge the gap where those sexually empowered women and sexually informed women feel comfortable and safe to vocalize their displeasure with their husbands? I think that's one of the biggest, and that's why, like I said, because like I said, there's a number of people now doing great work educating and informing women. Although I have women in my mindset, I'm also thinking about the men. Because if I'm just speaking about teaching women about your body, your anatomy, and I think also it's quite problematic where a man is telling women about their bodies. There's more than enough capable women to do that. So I mainly kind of direct my work thinking, okay, I'm speaking to men, but obviously women are welcome to listen and to contribute, because I think that's, like I said, it's changing that mindset where a man will feel shamed if he's not able to. If, like, again, even as a man, you should feel, I believe you should feel a sense of shame if your wife doesn't feel comfortable to open up to you, to talk about her insecurities, but she doesn't feel, if she's not sexually satisfied, that's fine. But if she doesn't feel comfortable or confident to vocalize that, then you haven't done your job by creating a safe space. But if men don't understand that, so a lot of men are misinformed because they're thinking, no, she lies down, she lets me have relations with her, so she's happy, she's comfortable. It's like, no, that's why I'm not speaking about sex, I'm speaking about sexual pleasure. And the only way you'd really know if a woman is sexually satisfied is not necessarily by her groaning or no, it's by her herself. So you need to understand, is she sexually satisfied? In order to know that, you need to be able to have open and honest conversations, candid conversations with her, but to tell you that. So that's why, like I said, is there's a lot of work that needs to be done on my gender side. But I'm still trying to be optimistic because I think attitudes are changing, but it will take a while.
And as you say, charity begins at home. I should give credit to my husband Ali, because as you said, conversations. See, me fingering and getting orgasms and getting fountains is one pleasure, but when he does it for me, and without any that ego battle or why you and why me or who first, who second, and he says that. Ki Sabiha, when I see you like this screaming and horny and getting all this ejaculation, all that fluid, he feels good. He feels nice. He feels ki I feel satisfied.
Uh,
Husband calling.
okay.
That's why it got paused. But yeah, it's Allah's grace. Though it took a lot of time for me to experience it, but as you said, conversation helped us. Communicating helps us. And as you said, then we need to keep this topic away from some people and share with those people who will understand it. And I'm sure
Exactly.
you're one of them doing some amazing work on it. So it's like, on this earth, some part of the country there is a tradition. There's a tradition, like marriage is a tradition. There are so many ceremonies we have. When you are conceiving, when the daughter gets a menarche, we have a huge ceremony in India when the menarche starts. But there's no ceremony for orgasms. I strongly believe there should be a ceremony when the girl first gets her orgasm, when the girl gets first, there should be a ceremony. But I'm sure
that would be a great idea. That would be a great idea. And that's why, again, it's also important, like what you said about like a ceremony or explicitly stated orgasm, because oftentimes we use euphemisms. So we may say like marriage, relationships, sex, but you can have all of these things, but they're not enjoyable. They're not pleasurable. And that's a problem. So there's people that are married for many years, but they're not sexually satisfied. There are people that have sex, whether inside marriage, outside marriage, but they're not sexually satisfied. They don't have orgasms. So when we're explicitly stating like orgasms or squirting, the fountain, as you call it, then people naturally first, they want to know what is that, because they may have had these other things like these sexual relations, marriage, but they've not experienced what ultimately should be the goal of like marriage or sex. This sexual pleasure experiences. So that's why sometimes it's important to be very clear when what we're talking about, because when you use euphemisms or words like relations or intimacy, people may think, okay, intimacy, like obviously closeness, relationships, but not orgasms, not sexual pleasure, not sexual satisfaction, and not understanding what it is. So that's why even for professionals like yourself, because people may just assume, oh, because a woman is married for X number of years, she has 4 or 5 children, she is sexually satisfied. It's like, no, she might be satisfied in other aspects of her marriage, but sexually she may not be, and she has a right to be sexually satisfied. And that's why, again, it's important that both men and women do know that, because like I said, for men, 9 times out of 10, we have sex, we will orgasm. So we will experience a level of sexual satisfaction. That's not the same for women. But a lot of us men, we just assume if we are sexually satisfied, she must be sexually satisfied. And there is a topic which, not to put blame on women, but faking orgasm, that's also a problem. That if you, from a male perspective, if a woman, if you've been with, you know, a woman or however many women, and your experience is that the women have been faking orgasms, so obviously you would think that you're doing a good job, the women are sexually satisfied. So that's also something that we need to kind of maybe bring to an end. But I do understand the reasons why a number of women fake orgasms, because they're more conscious of ensuring, like you mentioned, that the man is sexually satisfied so he won't marry someone else or leave her. But that's why, like I said, men need to understand it's part of their role, it's part of their duty to sexually satisfy their woman, not just to provide for her financially or provide a house or food and stuff like that. So that's why, yeah, that's what I would just say on that topic.
Absolutely. I feel like the life should go on, but I have borrowed your 1 hour and I'm done with my 1 hour. Almost everything is answered. And as you said, you know, I always feel I may eat rice, I may eat chapati, I may eat dal, and my hunger appetite is fulfilled. But I want biryani and I want it today, then I should get it. That is how I promote, because this word I started using because of Instagram. I can't speak directly. So if biryani my husband can't cook, I will cook it for myself and have it. It's my simple logic now. And the way you have, the way you explain, it's not only intimacy, it is about orgasm, it is about pleasure. So explicitly it is about orgasm. And thank you, sir. I was a bit nervous in the beginning whether I will understand, whether I will pour out properly or not, but this was one of my most amazing life. I may go repeat again and again and again, watch it. Anything, sir, you want to share, a piece of advice before we sign off from this live?
No, just thank you, Dr. Sabiha, for your work, and just keep it up, keep doing what you're doing.
Sure.
Do not focus or don't pay attention to detractors or people who may not understand the noble work that you're doing. And yeah, just like I said, just keep it up, and thank you again for inviting me. And yeah, just for the women to know that sexual pleasure and orgasm and squirting, they're all possible, and it is your birthright, as Dr. Sabiha said. And also for men to understand the importance of learning the female anatomy, understanding the different ways a woman can experience pleasure, and know that you're not a man or
By September, my daughter, she is, am I there?
I'm here, sorry. It froze.
Yeah, I thought I lost it. By this September, my daughter will be in London. She got her admissions in King's College London for BSc Psychology.
Oh wow, congratulations to her. That's one of the top universities.
Yeah, I get some opportunity to meet you in person, sir.
Yeah, we can maybe speak about that offline. I'll be happy to come around. Yeah, that would be fine.
Absolutely, sir. That was from my side, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, sir. Wa alaikum assalam. This was one of the most amazing live guys I had till date. Someone talking so nicely, explicitly, so gracefully. And there are countries where there is a tradition where orgasms and female pleasure is being explained. हमारे यहाँ पे तो सालों गुजर जाते हैं सिर्फ डिस्कशन करने में, उम्र गुजर जाती है. Imagine if I'm 45 and if I've never experienced orgasm, तो ये नाइंसाफी है मेरे हिसाब से. And that was today's live female pleasure, female orgasm. Please पूरा लाइव जाके देखना and do go and see Habib sir's page. The way he has explained his book, all his 7 books. This was, I guess, मेरे 1 साल की जर्नी में का सबसे अच्छा Instagram live. So thank you guys. Stay tuned always. We will be coming up with new topics and new guests every week. Till that time, enjoy sexual life, enjoy orgasms, enjoy pleasures. If you are vulva owners, enjoy yourself on your own. And if you are partners, he, she, whatever gender, it's a Pride Month. Happy Pride Month. Sex pleasure is a right. Trust me, you don't need to ask it for someone. You can have it on your own. अपना हक है वो और खुश रहना जितना जरूरी है वैसा ही sexual pleasure for females and say female pleasure. My pleasure is my right. I should first take care of it. Only then my partner will be trained to take care of it. When it comes to orgasms, when it comes to fountains, squirting, females can have ejaculations. If they didn't have it, they can learn to have it. And if they're having it, they can learn to have it more and more and more as and when they want. You can train your partners to help you to have these ejaculations. All this is doable, trainable, learnable, and achievable again and again and again. So on that note, guys, Shabba khair, good night, see you soon, bye bye.